It's Hammer and Stain here for your Hammer at Home instructions. So today we're doing the instructions for wood signs. So included in your packet should be everything you need to make your wood sign. These are all the instructions. So if it's easier for you, you can go and order and follow along with the video, or maybe just watch the video once and then you'll kind of understand it a little more when you start going through your instructions. So the first thing you're going to do is, if you need, sometimes there's some rough spots on your wood, so you can take a piece of sandpaper that's included in your kit and just hit any rough spots. So you just want to make sure it's nice and smooth. Make sure you wipe off the dust that will be from any sanding. You're going to take the orange sponge that was included in your kit. You're going to dip into your paint or stain. It's the same technique for either one. So you can wear gloves, but you don't need to. All of the paint is water-based, so it comes off your hands super easy with just some soap and water. I will tell you though, it does not come off your clothes hardly at all, so just be careful. I would make sure you're wearing old clothes, or maybe just put on an apron. So when you start to apply your paint or stain your background color, if you see how the wood grain kind of goes in this direction, that's what you want to do. You want to stay staining in that direction or painting in that direction. So you're just going to apply a thin coat. Make sure you spread it out evenly. You want to make sure that you get all your area. Try not to have any runs or globs of stain or paint on there. You want to make sure that you spread it all out evenly. You want to make sure that you get your edges and also your ends. You can do the back, but if you're going to hang it on a wall, I probably wouldn't waste your time. But if you're that person that likes that super complete feeling, feel free. You feel free to do that back. So once you get that all done, put on one thin coat. If you like that color, then you're good to go. If you want another darker color of it, or maybe some of the stain is still, or some of the wood grain is still showing behind your paint, you can put on another coat. I would do no more than 2 coats though, because otherwise it's going to make the drying a lot longer, and it could potentially cause issues when you put your stencil on. So just kind of a rule of thumb, no more than 2 coats of paint or stain on your background color. So after that's done, I would wait about 20 minutes for this to dry. So you can have a drink, you can get a snack, maybe discuss with your friends your next Hammer at Home project. So if you want, you could go ahead and pause the video at this point and then come back to us in about 20 minutes. Okay, so now your board is nice and dry. So your next step on your instructions is to take sandpaper, and you're just going to lightly sand in the same direction as you stained, in the direction of the wood grain. Just lightly sand just the top of your board, so just where you're going to apply that stencil. What that's doing is just giving us a nice smooth surface to adhere the stencil to. So once that's sanded, just kind of wipe it off again. So you're going to take your stencil. So ours is Love is Spoken Here. So you're going to take that stencil and you're going to flip it upside down onto a hard surface. So I'm going to put it on my board just so you can kind of see. You'll take either, you can use a popsicle stick or a credit card. And you're going to just take that and just, what you're trying to do is rub that stencil on and get that nice and tight to the tape that's on the front there. So when you have that nice and tight on there, you're going to keep your stencil down on the board. Your next step is to carefully remove the checkerboard pattern. We want to remove that. So hold your stencil down as you peel that off. You want to go nice and slow for this, especially if you have a lot of words. The slower that you go, the best chance you have of a nice stencil when you're done to put on. If you see any blue come up onto here, just take your stencil, rub it a little bit, and then keep going. You don't want any blue to come up because that's pieces that you're going to need later. So you can kind of set that aside. So now you have a sticky stencil. and the tape on the front there. So what you're going to do is you're going to, I kind of hover it above your board, get it as close to where you want it as possible, lay it down, but don't press it down just yet. Get it to where you want it. Feel free to measure, use a ruler or a tape measure to make sure it's exactly where you want it. So once you have it where you want it, this is where you're going to press it down. So if you press it down beforehand, you're going to have a hard time getting that back up. So once you have it on there, you're just going to use your hands. Rub that on there nice and tight. So after you have that, now we're going to peel the tape that's on the front there. So you want to just take a corner. Again, you want to be very slow at this process and very careful. So you want to just slowly roll this tape off. You don't want to pull up because that's actually going to pull your stencil up with it. So you're just going to slowly roll. Again, if you see blue on your tape, just kind of press it back down and rub a little bit. Because if you see blue, it's taking up part of your stencil. So, again, just go slow. Make sure you have no blue. So, once you have your tape off there, you can kind of just give this a once over. Make sure it's nice and tight on there. So, now we're getting ready to paint our board. So, here's our stencil. So, you're going to use the makeup sponges that are provided. You want to take this fat end of your makeup sponge. You're going to dip it into your paint. Then you want to dab it back off. So you don't hardly want any paint on there when you're starting to dab. So you're going to take this, hold it up a little bit, and just lightly dab your board. You don't want to smush it, and you don't want to rub. So just a nice light coat. So your first coat is going to be super light. It's almost like sealing that edge so it doesn't bleed. So after you're done dabbing your first coat, you can go ahead and dab your second coat. Again, same kind of rule of thumb. I don't like to put more than 2 coats. Sometimes you have to, especially if it's certain colors, reds and yellows are kind of resistant. So if you find though that you need another coat after the second one, that's fine. Your second coat can be a little bit heavier, but still don't glob on your paint. The lighter you go and the less pressure you do, the less chance you have of bleeding. Also, when you're dabbing, just remember if you have certain signs like our palette signs, which is kind of like this one here. So a palette sign is several boards that are put together. So they kind of have divots or little cracks where the boards meet up. You just want to make sure that you are extra careful and go really, really light in those areas so that they don't bleed. Okay. So I have all my dabbing done. So when it's time to take off your stencil, you're going to find a corner that's easy to come off. And you want to always make sure that you pull against the grain. So our grain runs this way, so we want to actually make sure we're pulling either up or down. Don't be afraid to rip the stencil off because it's going to rip. It's going to scare you, but it's okay. So you're just going to rip it off. And just set all your little pieces aside. So after you take your stencil off, there's going to be pieces that are left behind. So if you see like the insides of your letters, they're left behind. So you can take tweezers or you can use toothpick. I like to use the tweezers, but a lot of people like using the toothpicks or the hooks. So then you'll just take those pieces, just very carefully, try not to gouge the wood, just lightly pick up on it. So here's our finished sign. There's going to be times where there might be some little imperfections, but that's kind of what makes it unique. Okay, so I'm all done with my sign. I got all my little pieces weeded out of there. And now I'm ready to hang this or set this around. So you can, if you choose to, you can kind of distress your sign if you want. You could take some sandpaper, scuff up the edges just to give it a little rustic look. And there it is. So your last instruction is make sure you tag us on Facebook. Because you're at home, we don't get to see the finished product, and that's our favorite part. So if you could just tag us on Facebook so that we can see what you did, that'd be awesome. Have a great day. Thanks.